Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be replacing the inner and outer tie rod ends on a 2009 Volvo S60. This is the car we're going to be working on today. It's my 09 S60, and it has one outer tie rod end that has the bellows bad on it. This little section right here, the rubber part that keeps this nice and sealed. It's got a cut on it. I'm afraid I probably put it on there. Just got through doing a front end rebuild on the car, and I think I did that when I was in the middle of that. So we're going to just replace both the inner and outer tie rod sides. When you do this, be careful. You'll notice this has LH on it. That's left hand. The other one will be marked RH, right hand. This is the inner tie rod end. I was going to take this sucker to the alignment shop and just have them replace this as they did an alignment for me. Since I replaced all the front end components, you really need to have an alignment afterwards. And they could not get the inner and outer tie rod end to separate from each other. Such as, you know, stuff like that happens on a car that has 167,000 miles on it. I live in Michigan. We salt our roads during the winter. Guess what happens? They kind of bond themselves together. So I'm going to take the inner and outer apart as a unit and then replace them separately. I'll get them close on alignment, and then I'll take it into the shop and let them do the rest. So first thing you want to do, make sure you're wearing something that you don't mind getting dirty, and then you can proceed onto the car. Put the emergency brake on for the car, make sure it functions properly, and let's get the front end up in the air, get those tires off. Alrighty, I got both sides up on the air with jack and jack stand to back up the jack. Always a good idea. If you're going to be under the car in any fashion, make sure you have a jack and jack stand. I'm only removing one tire at a time because I only really need to. But you can see, you can look I've got a new strut in there, new axle, new lower control arm. This is new. Making sure it's all tight. This is a troublemaker. And you can see the boot's broken right there. I think you can see it. But what we're going to have to do is get up inside there. And if you look, down inside there somewhere, there's going to be a clip. And we got to get a long screwdriver in there and pop that clip off. And I think it's going to be easier if I turn this wheel so that it's all the way, this is all the way out here. So let me do that real quick. Okay, right in there is that clip I got to pop off. And I got to use my flashlight. So I'm going to do this. I don't think I can do this one-handed, so let me get that popped off. And what we're going to do, just need a long screwdriver, and we're going to pop it under that clip and just twist it, and it should pop right off. Okay, got that to pop loose, and if I look up in there, it's hard to see, I know, but you can see the clip is undone in there now. So now, you just got to remove that, and that should just need a good pair of pliers. Pull that off right there. And then see, that pops off, and there's that clip. See, those bands get just slotted right onto these little tabs there. The little holes get popped onto that. So now what I got to do is, see, this bellows is kind of sort of in my way here. And I'm going to have to cut this off because I got to get to this nut back behind it to be able to take this off. See that nut right there? That's the end of my steering rack, so I got to get a wrench up in there. Alrighty, so now that I've got that cut off, you can see what I've got to get to, that bolt or nut end right there. And that is this. take this out of the packaging. It's fighting with me. That is this piece right here that I've got to remove. So let's get that set aside and get my big old wrench in here. I'm going to put that on there and see if I can break that loose. Whew. Took me a second to get my big wrench in there to get to this, but I can turn it by hand now. Let me get my pair of channel locks opened up enough, and see, I can just take my channel locks there. It's just as easy as could be to turn now. So that is separating from there. So now I've got to get this off of here, and I think that is an 18 millimeter, and I can just pop that right off with a speed wrench and take that the rest of the way out. So this is out. I just put the bolt back on there to hold on to it. Now I can take the whole thing and just twist it right off. And we have the whole thing out. Sweet, huh? So I got my new parts around here somewhere, right there. Lay them out. Make sure I have the same part. See, it's labeled properly. And I got my other piece here. It goes right in its place. So I'm going to put this on here and try to line these up with distance as close as I can, and then mark where that is on here with this bolt. And then I've got to put my boot on and put it all back together. Okay, I got the inner tie rod screwed back in here. It just screws right in place, and I've got to tighten this down. This, you can get a special tool that clamps around this piece right here that lets you tighten it down to a specific setting. This is 100 Newton meters, which is roughly 72 foot-pounds, I do believe. So we're going to try to get that done, and then I'm going to thread this back into there. I've got my measurement on this as close as I can get it, so that I've got to turn that 48 turns, half turns onto that. So let's go ahead and get this tightened up first, because I'm going to have to close the garage door. It's raining now. See? Okay, so I've got this put back on, torqued down. I got that into hopefully the correct number of turns. I got my nut locked down into place there. The boot is pushed up into place. Don't forget to put your boot on before you put this on. So I've got to get, with this replacement kit, there's a zip tie that you hold this into place with, and back there. But I've got this turned all the way toward this direction right now, so it's going to be hard to get to that one because the bellows is stretched out pretty far. So I'll zip tie this close one first, turn this straight, and then I'll zip tie the back. And what I like to do with the zip tie with these replacement boots that don't use the metal clips, every time I do my oil change, I get up under here, inspect that zip tie, and make sure it doesn't need to be replaced. And I'll probably double zip tie it, so if one breaks, the other will still hold. Eventually, they will get brittle and snap off, though, probably. So let me get my zip ties in place, and I'll be right back. One thing I did forget to mention, when you get to the point where you need to put that zip tie on the inner part of that boot, you do have to remove the cover on the bottom, like the air dam or whatever you want to call it, because it does cover up that section there. I forgot to do that, so I've got to do that now, and then I can get to that inner part of the boot, and I'll put my zip ties on to hold that sucker in place. It's already pushed back in. I've just got to zip tie it and so it doesn't come loose. As otherwise, when you turn your tire to make a turn so that it pulls that bellows out, it'll pop that off the end, and you need that zip tie to keep it in place there. Whew. If it looks like I've been in a battle, it kind of feels that way too. That zip tie is harder to get on than you think, because there's no room back behind it to work. So you got to thread it from one side Make sure it's in the proper groove on that bellows. If you look on this bellows, there's a section here it goes into to hold it in properly, and you've got to get it around that and loop it around through the other side to start that zip tie, and it always wants to pop loose and go on the outside or inside or whatever. It's a lot harder than it looks. That's probably been the hardest part of this job so far. Other than that, I'm ready to get the tire back on and go do the other side, so let's keep at it. Alright, there we go. So I completed the same steps on the other side. I cut off the bellows, undid the inner tie rod, which was easy. I mean, it's not that difficult. They're not on as tight as you think they are. They're more just a heavy snug than anything, so they're pretty easy to get off. And then remove this, and then you can screw the entire thing out as one assembly, and then you can get pretty darn close on getting the length right to put it back in place. Don't forget to put your bellows back on. You put your inner tie rod on, tighten that up, put your bellows back on. This one came with a metal clip instead of a zip tie, so I like that. And I did put a zip tie on the end, although it's not 100% necessary. I like to do it anyway because these could, you know, wiggle loose. Put this on, tighten that up, and now we got to get the tire back on and go get an alignment, and we are done.